Misty, what's up, buddy?
Hey, bro.
How's it
Here we
going?
are.
Here we are. Gonna have a fun one here today, folks. It's April 24th, Friday. We are just going to riff here. Please make sure you follow both of us. Please give Mist a follow on X at Into the Mist 13. Me, MNBFY Pod. I'll get better at that.
Dude, I still mess it up, so I'm glad you do too.
I never thought about when I made this podcast name how difficult the acronym would be. But yeah, so please give us both a follow, like, subscribe, comment on this video. Please share. And we are just gonna go in. Today we're gonna talk about the world. It's in panic. Everything's losing its shit. It's all falling apart. And Mist, I want to talk about what the hell is going on with these scientists, dude. I just saw this article that in China now there's like missing, dead, detained scientists there too. So like
So
what do you
that
know about
threw me for a loop
right?
because I thought, so I have, of course, when we're observing these current events, being situation monitors that we are, we look at these things and we start to formulate our own theories. And so I was kind of formulating some theories, and I'll tell you about them, in a minute. But like once the Chinese scientists kind of went missing, it really threw a wrench in the gears of mine because my theories, well, it's just a theory, right? And it's not the most likely theory. The most likely theory is obviously probably our government, maybe. But my theory was like, oh, okay, well, we kill Iranians, nuclear scientists, and so why wouldn't Iran do the same to us? They could find these people and do the same thing. And so that I was, and I wasn't attached to it, but I was just throwing it out there. And and then the Chinese scientists started dying, or they reported that the Chinese scientists were dying. And I was like, well, that throws my whole thing out the window because there's no point in that. They're backdoor allies. So like, you know,
Dude, yeah.
so what do you think about the whole thing?
I don't know, man. I kind of think it has to. Okay, so I'm just like looking at the types of scientists, and I think you agree with me on this, right? It's like, okay, so nuclear physicists, anti gravity, and I know we were talking before we started the recording, right? And I was like, okay, what about like Bob Lazar? And like everything he said is he legit now? Because I remember I watched his the documentary. It was Jeremy Corbett. I think it's Jeremy Corbett. If I got that wrong, correct me, folks, in the comments. But he had that documentary like a couple years back, and then at some point in the documentary, like Lazar is talking about like, yo, when I was out there in S4 in Area 51 or whatever, he's like, I stole a little bit of that Element 115, right? And then like later in the documentary, they show like a scene at his lab, his own company, and they're like I don't know, like Spooks or something rated that shit, and I was wondering like, damn, did they like listen in like, oh, dude, he has the thing, go after him. But like the reason I raise that is like he went public. He's been public forever. He probably was one of the smart. He was Los Alamos too. Some of these folks like in America, as far as scientists, are like former Los Alamos scientists too. So I wonder if like he was just like ahead of the game and thinking about, I just need to go out there and be as public as possible about this, throw out as much as I can. Obviously, I think he throws in some lies too. You can't like put it all out there, if you will. But it's probably what insulated him from like being unalived, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
but like that's kind of like where my mind's at. It's like, like when you think of like International Space Station, it's like a co-op, right? Like everyone goes up there, like Russia, US, and everyone's working together. And like I also kind of know, like in the corporate world, like there's the facade of like industry where you're like, oh, they're all competing with each other. But really, when you're in the corporate world and you have some visibility, you learn that in like a specific industry, all the heads of these corporations, they communicate with each other and they plan like what kind of technologies are we all going to work on, like who's going to take the lead on this one, and like, okay, so you're going to pay for the investment on like R&D, proof of concept, so you get dibs on putting it out first, but then we're along with you in the research process, so we're second. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like I'm wondering, like, was this like a global thing that happened, like whatever they were working on, was there like some sort of like mind-bending discovery that they're like, holy shit, like we can't even risk letting these people be alive because if they say anything, and it's something that's world altering and whatever it may be, like what I mean, maybe
Yeah,
that's
so
fine.
actually I had I kind of like uh some of the other theories that were presented to me, because I posted the Iranian theory and was kind of like, huh, well, I'm curious about this. And then the Chinese thing came out, so kind of shot my theory down, like I said. But one of my followers brought it up and he said, oh, well, who really has the most to benefit? Because as I said, maybe I mentioned this in one of our episodes, but my first kind of like question whenever I view a world event is, was this by design, or was this on by flaw or by design? And then the second question is cui bono, which means who benefits, right? And so you kind of follow that line of thinking and you're like, so the people that have the most to benefit really is the long-standing oil and gas companies, the power producers. And maybe there was some sort of new energy source or
Yeah.
engine or propulsion device, that was going to, eliminate the need for oil, or, not that anything necessarily could threaten it, because obviously oil is imbued everywhere, but maybe something along those kind of thoughts, something that would, the automakers, or, something like that.
Like the old Edison versus Nikola Tesla thing, where Tesla is creating free energy, but in our capitalist society, it's like, how do we monetize? Edison goes and basically proposes ACDC, right? And metered electricity, and hence we didn't get have the revolutionary technological change we probably could have had 100 years ago, or 60 years, 80 years ago. God knows where we could be. I could see that too, though. It's like, it's like that guy. Remember, there's that story of a guy. Maybe it was in the 90s, where he like learned how to use water to power a generator, and then
Yeah,
he had like a patent. Then he like suicided himself, and then the patent was like taken. So
yeah,
like I could see that too. I could see it as a threat to our the pet. I say this as a general term, but like the petrodollar system, the financial system, and maybe that revolutionary change would have been at the better, the betterment of humanity, but at the cost, at the loss or cost for the the corporations.
right. Which is a very viable theory. Um, but it still, to me, doesn't quite fit. Like there's still something sort of, and it's obviously these are just intuitive feelings that I have. And um but there's something definitely afoot. Now that, that one thing that they released where the woman, where she was like showing that her hands were being burned.
That was
Um,
crazy. Yeah, Amy. I forget her last name, but yeah, I saw that yesterday.
yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because, I don't know. It was also kind of weird how she like set up her computer where, someone could like just look in the window and see, like, I think that I would probably put my computer, I'd be in the back corner, of like the
Yeah,
room where the windows could never see my screen or anything like that. Like where she was sitting with her computer wasn't really secure. Edward
right.
Snowden would probably have a panic attack about,
Yeah, like she knows she's under potential direct energy threat. I'm not ripping on someone that's passed, but like
for
I agree
sure.
with you. Like it's just like, well, if you know that this is happening to you, like why are you in line of sight for that thing to affect you?
Yeah.
Totally, it's kind of weird.
Eh, Try, and try to change. And I get that, probably, a lot of people under that kind of duress, most people have never been in trouble with authority, whatever this authority is, whether it's aliens or oil or, big or government or Israel or Iran or, whoever is doing these things. Um, it's like most people have never been hunted by an authority. And so they're not going to be thinking like, uh, under normally. And so I respect the fact that they're probably not going to do things like that. Whereas, somebody maybe who has, maybe had a warrant, or been somewhere like that or something, they would might be a little bit more like, oh, I've got to think clearly now, or military trained or something. They're like, oh, but for an average citizen who's just like a scientist that just goes to work and like is just putting their brain to the test, they're not thinking about how to protect themselves from authorities and stuff. But I wish one of them had done a dead man switch. Like if I was one of these scientists that's out there, because there can't be that many in the world, right? It's got to be a pretty small community technically of scientists that can do these things. So if I was a scientist out there and three of my fellow scientists went missing in a small time frame, 4 5, I'd be like, okay, it's time for me to start putting some intellectual protections in place, so that in case my mind is erased, that the things that I have to offer or that I'm doing isn't just deleted, right? Like I would want to try to maintain that value, whether, I don't necessarily know if you could share it with anybody, because then obviously you are making them a target too. But if there was some sort of way, I mean, you can make smart contracts on the blockchain, you can do things like that, and I maybe would be trying to figure out a way to um, tell about who was going to do it, right? Because I think that these people have an idea of who they were being hunted by. I think, right? You would have to kind of know. I would assume like you stumble across something, and at some point in time, somebody's going to say, "Hey, you better make sure you really keep your mouth shut," or whatever. But this is an assumption, but I would want to protect my work somehow, and try to let people know how it was, who and how it was done, right? Like try. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I have this mute button. I always forget where I have it on mute or not.
That's
uh,
awesome.
no, I do agree with you. I also always think about how, like, putting myself in their shoes. We on the outside can't really comprehend what type of harassment, assaults, or the technologies that are being used against them. So I would imagine myself that, like, if I was under so much surveillance and like there's always these little breadcrumbs to show me from everything I do. And essentially anytime I think of I have an idea of how to get out of it or dead man switch, there's like a breadcrumb there showing me like, oh, we see what you were going to think about doing. So
Yeah.
like the level of paranoia, and I would imagine the impact on one's mental health is just so beyond our comprehension that I just don't think that they don't try to do that stuff. I think a lot of times they do. It's just these people that are whoever they are, if we get in the conspiracy world, you know where I stand with this stuff. I personally think there's like a cap. Like if you've ever played the game Deus Ex, have you ever played that game?
I have not.
So it's an older game, but like essentially the short of it is like there's like a shadow group that is over everything. Think Illuminati. I think they even called them Illuminati in the game, which is funny. But like I'm not saying I believe in like the Illuminati, but I believe that there is a power base that is well above the average human being.
Or several.
Oh yeah, there's definitely factions. I agree with that. Um, they have levels of technology that are decades beyond us. So like when we think we're doing something, they already know what we're doing. Like think about this. We're watching the rollout of like large language models, and they're telling us it's AI. And literally all it is algorithms and databases. It's like a massive query system,
It's
right?
a yeah, it's a database crawler with an output system.
And it's like it's what its output, what it gives you is it is extraordinary, where you're like, make me like my background, like I was like, I want the theme to be panic, like throw in elements of war, censorship on social media, and oil prices, Bitcoin versus XRP, and it did, right? And to me it's like incredible to see that, but all it's
What's
doing is,
Bitcoin?
huh?
What's Bitcoin?
It's
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
this one,
Never heard of it.
this is the one that we're all
Yeah.
about.
I'm
That
just kidding.
no
Sorry.
financial advice is being provided on this podcast. Do not listen to anything we say. Make your own decisions on your own with your money.
Yeah.
But XRP's king.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just feel like they're like, no matter what you do, they know. Like
So
right now, we're living under the illusion that we think we have. Dude, we've already signed off our like. I'm on X right now, ranting and raving about like Anna Polina Luna, the former strip club cocktail waitress turned House of Rep, and she's just like advocating for FISA 702 to be bundled with Save Act. And I'm like, what in the world is this woman? I'm trying to so hard to control my language here, but like, she's advocating for like the further erosion of like domestic our Fourth Amendment, rights. It's like American citizens. Granted, we already have, Patriot Act 730. Like they can electronically go into anything that you have if they have suspicion of you, right? So like we live in this illusion that we have this privacy, and beyond the government level, you also have like terms of service agreements, right? Like, oh, you got this new app, you just scroll to accept. You don't read anything. You don't read that they're going to give your information to a third party, or if government requires the information be turned over, they turn everything over about you to them. There's no protections there, right? And then you buy, like when you used to go buy like a video game that was like in a box, right? And you would rip the shrink wrap off. That was a term of service. Believe it or not, there's precedent. I think it was, I don't remember the case, the court, like the case law, but like when you would remove the shrink wrap, that is you consenting to whatever terms and policies that they set forth for you to use that game.
hmm,
And so we live in an illusion of like privacy. So I say that to say, how could, like, in what way would they have been able to truly be able to like set a dead man switch? It's like in every movie we've ever seen, it's like this conspiracy that they uncover, and then by the end they're like, yes, we got this like movie, and this video, and it's gonna go to the news. And then it goes to the news, and like, I forget what movie it was. I think it was like the Resident Evil movie with Mila Jovovich. And like they release the video, like the reporter gets the video and releases it, and like over time they show clips, like the news starts to basically roll it out into a different angle, and then eventually by the end they show you that it was all a hoax anyway. And
hmm.
we're so easily programmable as people, as humans, especially as Americans. I mean, we have the memory of a mouse, right? So even if they, like, that's my thing is too, like, even if we get the truth, I think like a person like yourself or me or many others that probably will listen to this will have the discernment to say, holy shit, right? Like that's real. But when you think of it from a general populace, like the general public perspective, like we're a minority, like 5% of the population that would know the truth when it's looking at them. And that's part of their game too.
Yeah. So I do think that you're probably right. There's, those people are under some sort of enhanced monitoring, probably. Um, but, we were getting things of them on like, her getting her hands burned on Twitter. We're getting, so I guess I kind of also have the question then, if we're assuming, if it's the government that assassinated these scientists because they were going to release something, maybe, if from that angle, maybe these scientists had no idea that it was even coming, right? Maybe they just got
Yeah.
blindsided and assassinated, and they weren't planning on being whistleblowers in some form or fashion. Maybe they were just working, and some secretary saw something that they shouldn't have and slipped it out, and big oil found out that they're about to release eternal propulsion magnetic engine or something like that, right? And so maybe they were blindsided. But I just wonder, at that kind of level, it's like, I do wonder, like, what is going through their head. Like, if they are thinking about whistleblowing, they have to know that they're under all sorts of these extra surveillance things, and that they're under monitoring, and that possibly even, that they're being forecasted, right? They can see the differences in behavior and read the different facial, and understand when a human is starting to get disgruntled, so it makes me wonder, what their decisions were they choosing to try to like release this to the public, and there was like this coordinated effort, and they were like, oh, we need to raise awareness, and the government just came through and was like, nah, nope, not on this, too important, or were they just complying, and they had no idea that this was going to come. And that's kind of where my mind goes
I
with
think
some of
that's
this
it.
thought.
I think they were just off. That's what I was saying at the beginning. I don't think that they were. I don't think it was like
But by the 10th one, it's coming, right?
yeah, but then by the 10th one, maybe by the 8th one, you would have understood that they tried stuff, and then again, it's like that element of despair. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just
For
that. I
sure.
mean, I just imagine that, right? Like you're like, holy shit! Like look at the world right now. Everyone feels powerless. Now imagine you are a direct player in an event where you're dealing with these powers. Like you're one individual. Like how much despair would you feel?
Yeah.
And
Well, I guess it would depend on what I was doing.
I mean, true. I mean, but there is a good case of it, like Edward Snowden, but he was an insider. He was in it. He was in NSA, like he was a contractor in the NSA. He knew exactly what to do, how to get around it. He was the guy doing it. And so he had the ability to do what he did, right?
Yeah.
And God bless. I mean, for me, people might disagree, but God bless him for it. I appreciate what Edward Snowden did. Was it the legal thing to do? No, but I mean, do bad people play by the rules? No, they don't. So, but his case is unique because he was in that element. Versus these are just scientists, man. Like these are
Yeah, they're
folks.
not prepared secret agents.
Yeah, exactly. And like
And maybe they didn't even know it was coming.
I think it's that. I mean,
But okay, so I do have I think that if it wasn't some sort of insider job, right, by like 5 or 7 or even 3, by 3, you'd think that they would like reallocate all these scientists to a bunker, right? Or, like, no, you're remaining on site, like you're going to be surrounded by bodyguards, which would insinuate that this was our own government, because
exactly,
by by a certain point in time, you're going to try to protect your assets if this is an outside source or aliens,
exactly.
or like something like that. You're going to consolidate and protect. You're not going to let these people be in their houses, I
That's
would
why I think it's
hope.
on the inside. It's from
Yeah,
the
well,
inside,
and
man.
so just, yeah, and I hadn't considered that angle until now, which probably points the finger at our own government. But it's
But it's global.
curious.
So it's like every government doing it internally to their own, right? Like the Chinese scientists probably got whacked by their government, American by our own government, right? And it
Have they
all didn't
happened anywhere else? Now, okay, so
but
I do
but
have
but, there,
a,
but there's
I
that point you made that's like there's a delta to this, which is like the Iran aspect, which is the nuclear scientists that were killed by Israel, for example, right? Or by America or whatever. We know, at least we know the ones that were killed in June were targeted by Israel. But before that, June of 25, there's been scientists that have been killed, mysteriously, always assumed to have been Israel that was doing it, right? So like that's a delta to my theory that it's always done internally. But in that case, maybe they were just like they were working on something separate from this. They were literally these scientists were working on nuclear technology, trying possibly working on or likely working on nuclear weapons because we know Iran got to 60%. They're having like latent deterrent, right, where they had 60% so they could scale up at a shorter period and build a bomb potentially, right? So maybe that's why they were taken out, or that is why they were taken out. Versus these are people that are working on like deep, deep black technology, right? So it's like I think they're apples and oranges, but it is something I wanted to concede because it is something to consider too on that
It
angle.
is. It is. I think uh I'm curious to see if any more drop. And after that kind of happens, where and stuff like that would allude to more. Maybe they're done. But there's like
One more just
15,
dropped.
but
I
there's
think
like 15. Oh
like
yeah.
there was like the 12th or 13th one was confirmed either yesterday or
Oh,
this
they're
morning.
fifth. Oh, and then 2 more dropped after that. We're up to 15 now.
Dude, they're dying every day. it's,
Yeah.
it's, it's freaking
So
crazy.
so if I was one of these scientists, I would definitely be like, I don't know, something. But I think this is probably a good point to tangent into that beautiful thing you've got behind you there about the oil prices, because we would be amiss if we didn't talk about that. Because I do have, I think that a lot of people think that because this Iranian conflict or whatever it is has slowed down a little bit, that we're through this. If you look at the futures prices, they're
Yeah.
they're they're
105
positive.
94.
What's that?
105 Brent 94, I think is last I saw for WTI.
Oh yeah, and I think that physical oil per barrel is still over 140. So
Yeah.
you're still looking at like a 35 to $45 price gap between futures and actual. And I think I hadn't done quite the math on this or verified it, but I did see a couple days ago that somebody had mentioned that the last oil that had left the Strait of Hormuz, um bef- uh the last oil that had left before the conflict started has hit markets. So from here on out, it's only going to be the elevated oil prices. And we've already
Right.
gone through a price surge, already. And so now we're going to start looking at the oil that's going to be costing 60, 70, 80, 90, all the way up to $140 a barrel, because the supply shock, like kind of like this slinky train, like it got congested and then it's got to kind of like, we're going to have to get through the supply shock oil. And the thing about it, sadly, is that the source still isn't returned to full output. It's not like we could say right now that
No.
the Strait of Hormuz is pumping out 100% of the oil capabilities that it was supposed to. Like we're
We're at a 30,
still
40% deficit in production right now.
Yeah, so we're still creating higher price oil that's coming in. So I do have kind of a theory about that, but I want to hear your thoughts before we go down, a big rabbit hole.
I mean, so the futures prices right now are June's prices too, right? And those are contract prices. Like to your point, on demand prices are much higher, but like it's so like for the layman to go online and see what current today price is hard. Like no one knows how to look for this stuff. But the other thing that people aren't paying attention to that is even bigger of an issue is the deficit in urea. Like ammonia based products, fertilizer. you know, we are going to see very likely a shortage in food production. And maybe it won't impact us here as much in America, but like globally, I mean, this is existential for some countries. This isn't only about oil. Um, Now, as far as like the oil prices as they are, what pisses me off the most about it, and I'll leave it here, is you know, the big oil corporations are making a fucking killing. They're making so much money. People are like, "Oh my god, it's 140, it's 120, it's 15." Yeah, guess who's making that money? There's people making money hand over fist right now. You think they're bitching about it?
Nah,
They don't give a shit about you.
they don't want to change it either.
No, that's why there's not enough. There's no ire about this from those corporations. From the Saudis. They don't give a shit. They're like, we are crushing it right now. I'm about to build another five-story parking garage and put 15 Bugattis in it just because I have this excess money. Like,
Yeah,
and the tires are gonna rot off the cars. Like, they don't give a shit. You know, I mean, there's no urgency for the global populace to be remedied by this. Is where I'm getting at.
yeah,
I don't see this getting corrected anytime soon. And we're on day what 57, 58 of this like whatever the fuck it is, war, ceasefire, quasi ceasefire, blockade situation. We are now that many days behind in supply chain. We're that many days behind in transport. We're that many days behind in potentially, fertilizing soil for crops. Like does that fertilizer get used to create feed for your meat, for what you consume, like your beef, your chicken? Like people are not thinking about this in the grand in the scale they need to. And that's honestly what scares me. I view this as already a mortal wound that the average person can't comprehend. I'll leave it there, buddy. You take it from there. Sorry.
I think no, I think that's well said, to be honest with you. And I think that that's kind of one of the cruel things about the institutional investors is there is a little bit of fuck the retail mindset, fuck the pleb, because they're like, well, my portfolio is doing good right now. I have oil in my portfolio, like it's up. Why would I complain? Like I'm doing great, you know? And riding the volatility of oil too, right? People can make great money, especially if they figure out a pattern, or they're on the inside, and they know, like, oh, tomorrow morning we're going to be at war again, and then tomorrow night everything's going to calm down. If somebody knew, they're like, buy sell, they would be made, like you said, hand over fist. Like they can't even count it, like in that scene in Blow, where they're counting, they're trying to find places to stack the boxes that
Yeah.
are like $250,000 each, and they don't have any room to stack the boxes. It's going to be like that scene, except for bigger. And I think so. In order to kind of, I think that I don't, we could argue whether or not the intent of the conflict and such was my theory, which I'll break down in a second,
Okay.
or if it's just someone capitalizing, no crisis wasted kind of mindset. Every crisis an opportunity, which is
Yeah.
very much, bank
The old
global
Rahm
banker thought.
Emanuel saying,
Yeah.
never let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly. So, I don't want to, it could, and it doesn't really matter, right? 'Cause we could be splitting hairs on that. And I don't know if I have stake on one way or another. However, I think that there is a play here with the petro market, that the ultimate goal of some of this, and like I said, whether it's a byproduct or or was intended to create this market change, I think that markets change under stress, and that in order to truly change the deepest market of our time, oil, all other markets spawn off of oil in our current society. Everything is based on it, like you were saying, food, tech, clothing, goods, every market is affected by oil, whether it's transportation or directly. The amount of things that are plastic in our lives, like just think about that. Look around, like your house real quick, and just, the amount of things that oil is in directly, and then think about how, the transportation. Anyway, I think that, that markets change under pressure, and that we need to get to this new system. We are headed for a brave new world in the technological aspect, one way or another. We're steaming that way, whether we want to be in the CBDC, digital commodity train or not. We don't have that choice as a citizen anymore to say we don't want this. It was too well played, it was too perfectly planned. However, I think that, you know there is an amazing transformation that's going to be coming. And I think that, so the thesis, of course, has always been the US dollar as the petrodollar for, as long as the US dollar has existed, pretty much, or not existed, but it's been the currency that countries have to buy oil in. And now Iran is proposing the antithesis, right? Which is like using yuan or other currencies or digital currencies. And I think that the synthesis is that the world kind of comes to an agreement. And it might take a little bit while, right? Because we're going to go through this negotiation thing, this negotiation time, and
Are we?
all the while this market is bottlenecking and creating pressure downstream, right? Everybody is clamoring. They're like, gas is $8 a gallon, food is milk is $13 a gallon. Like what? Like I can't even afford to buy clothes. Like
Yeah.
everybody on the back end is going to be clamoring. There's going to be so much pressure built up that the obviously people don't revolt until they starve, and this is going to create could create starvation scenarios for some people. And I think it's going to force this whole new world order, whole old petro order onto the new technological blockchain. And I think that, obviously that doesn't stop the supply shock, right? The supply shock is still a real problem that we're just going to have to navigate through, and hopefully it doesn't go back to conflict and the strait stays closed. In order for the world to heal, um the strait has to open. As long as that strait is closed, the supply shock is going to be lengthening. Like you said, we're almost 60 days into it right now, which means that even if it opened today, we still have 60 days of supply shock backup, like to work through. So that's a lot of pressure. And I really do think that they're going to use this to flip on to the XRPL, which is the, obviously XRP ledger, and that XRP is going to become the new petrocurrency of the world because of this supply shock. Now, again, I don't know if it was intended or this is a byproduct, but that's my theory on it. And that doesn't make it easier for us consumers. However, that's what I think that is part of this whole problem, this whole scenario. You're muted again.
I do it every time. Sorry about that. I actually, I actually think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be a war. There's Iran just passed in their parliament like their new stipulations for the strait. There are ships getting through, dude. That's a total lie. There are ships getting through. It's just ships that are are not agreeable to Iran aren't getting through. Basically, you have that very, the strait is the mouth of the strait is large. You have like the Gulf of Oman side, then you have that hooked side that hangs toward, by the coast of Iran. That is the only section that is actually open right now. There are ships getting through. And we have like what 15 to 20 of our military vessels out there. I mean, what if 30 ships get through? We don't have the ability to jam 30 ships. So there's a lot of propaganda going on out there. I don't trust a word our own government says anymore, but that's just me, and just to be clear, and I think I've said this
For real.
over the 11 episodes, I have no love for the damn Islamic Republic of Iran. I loathe them. But at the same time, I respect the nation's sovereignty. And I would imagine if America was put in the same position, we would do the same shit. Any country would. Like it's happened throughout history. So like keep, I'm not saying this to you, but like people need to keep shit real, like,
Yeah.
oh, they're the bad guy. They should just fall on their knees and let us like head chop them like Al Jilani from Syria. No, it's not going to happen. They're going to fight for their existence, dude. So retarded. But
and we don't even like it. Like we like
we don't want I don't want the war. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
I didn't vote for this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, continue on your rant.
No. That's it. I mean, I'm not for this, man. Like I don't want this. I didn't vote for this, dude. I didn't vote for GW Bush Cheney term 3, and then I just see a bunch of cultists like that are like loyal to a man and not to the Constitution. Like, oh, it's a military action, so it bypasses war powers. I'm like, yeah, go fuck yourself. It needs to go to Congress. Like, like, oh, but Obama did this and Bush did that. Doesn't make it right. If Trump is supposed to be the MAGA president and make America great again, in my mind, making America great again is getting back to the Constitution, following our laws. It's what sets us apart from the animals. Like what Winston said, rules. Like Winston from John Wick.
John Wick.
Like, rules separate us from the animals. I mean, there's wisdom in that, and we're because like we bitch and we moan about like the Lebanese or how the Germans are. Look what England's doing to its people with censorship. We're doing the same shit here, just it's different flavors. So no, I don't think this war is going to end. I think it's going to get hot again. There's a little nation that could, like Thomas the Choo Choo Train, that seems to have our fucking government by the balls in a vice. And every time our administration pivots away from continuing this thing, it's like they give it a quarter turn more to squeeze the balls, and like I just don't see it. I don't see it ending. Dude, if I'm proven wrong, I would be so happy to be called an effing moron, you stupid retard. I want that to happen. I want people to be able to say, you're the dumbest person on X. You're the dumbest person on YouTube. And I would say thank you for calling me out for that. You know?
Like, I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah.
No, I think that there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, because there's always, not only is there the military industrial complex, obviously, that benefits off of war and things like that, because then their goods and services are needed. It's not just building stockpiles, all of a sudden they're in active production. But there is this part of America that is bloodthirsty. They're just ready to go to war. And the problem is like, most often they're not the ones that are going to go to war. I can understand why a veteran would want to go and fight Iran. I can understand that, because Iranian bombs killed some of their brothers, and again, I'm not promoting the Iranian government, but we have to look at things in a global scale right now. And I mean, sadly, every country has a right to defend itself. What would we as Americans do, even if we hated our leader? If we had the worst leader ever, what would we as Americans do if Russia came over and assassinated our president and said, "Oh, we felt that the world felt that you needed a regime change." Like, oh, it's gonna be so on. Like, and I understand that people are like, well, might makes right. And it's like, no, well, it makes it right now, And the thing is, other countries are building in might as well. And that's why we should be more careful in considering these things about like going and just bombing another nation. I really do think that Iran was underestimated in this conflict. And I know that all the propaganda says that we've destroyed 100% of their military capabilities and 100% of their navy. And there's all this propaganda that just leads to saying that we're just, kicking ass over there. And I'm not saying that, like, when our targeting screens have something in their view and it's a direct shot with a missile, we're gonna fuck it up. Like, okay, great. Like, but the problem is that targets aren't always visible on a screen, and so we're not always going to fuck it up. Now, I agree that in a direct all out punch fest, and if that target is on our screen and we can see what we need to hit, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
but I think that, like, so I don't want to make it seem like, we're just getting our asses kicked over there, because that'll kick in everybody's thing too. But I really do think that Iran as a nation is holding its own against us. Like, if this was something like Iraq, or if this was something like Afghanistan or Kuwait, or anywhere else in the world right now, except for maybe Russia and China, there would be boots on the ground up their butt all over the place. Like, they would be, we would have been invaded and at the Capitol, right? Like, just like we did with Iraq. However, I think that Trump, for whatever decisions this were, bad, obviously poor decisions, maybe there's corrections that he can pull out of this, but I think that
Diplomacy. That's
it's
it.
not. Oh, I think that he did realize, though, it was like, oh, for all his poor decisions, I think that he did realize it was a poor idea to fully invade. He could have done it by now. You're muted again.
Dude, they've already admitted why we hit first. They said, like, Trump said it, Rubio said it. I even believe Hegseth said it. They're like, we were told by Israel they're going to hit, so we had to hit first because we knew Iran would retaliate against our bases in
Hmm.
the GCC countries. Like, we were pulled into this fucking event.
Yeah,
We were pulled into it. I for one, as much as I may have, call me turncoat against Trump, he turned against us. That's my opinion. That's how I feel. If you don't agree, I don't really give a fuck.
he
Okay.
underestimated Iran. He had, whether it was
He
bad
was told,
intel.
yeah, no, he was told, riding the victory of Venezuela, you take out their little Ayatollah, and they're gonna bend, they're gonna show their soft bellies and let us dominate them. The absolute opposite happened. You know why? Because Iran has 1,500 fucking years of history of being invaded and pretty much always being successful in repelling or absorbing the invasion. They either, like, the only successful, truly dominant invasion and occupation and takeover Iran was the Seleucid Empire by Alexander the Great. But what ultimately happened?
They died
No, well, I mean, they did in the end.
and they
The
assimilated.
remaining 10,000 Macedonian soldiers were slaughtered. But you know what Iran's play was? Let them in. Be kind to them. Be cordial to them. Let them absorb, assimilate them to our culture. They even did it to the fucking Mongols. The fucking Mongols that killed 85% of their population. They were able to convert the Mongols to accept their culture. They repelled
Yeah,
the entire Afghan invasion.
I think that he definitely had bad intel, and
It's ridiculous,
I
bro. I'm
think
sorry.
I no, you're good, and I think that Iran has unique military capabilities in the world because they have been beat down a lot. They kind of had to learn how to be like, okay, we're not going to be the toughest guy in the fight, we're not going to be the biggest guy in the fight, we're going to be clever and crafty, and I think that those are really dangerous opponents because you're never really quite sure where they're going to hit from. And I think that, I really hope that this ceasefire plays through. I really hope that Trump, while he will never lose face publicly, I really hope that he's trying to figure out a way to backpedal his decisions, which I sort of think that he is doing because of how many
Trying.
times he's put off these. Yeah, he
He's
keeps
trying to go to
delaying.
a diplomatic resolution, and that would be he could turn that into a W. And if he does that, I will commend him for that. As
Yeah,
long as he does not get pulled back into further, because if it happens again, it's all the way.
yeah.
It's gonna be all the way. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not Afghanistan. If we had our 2003 level might, I think we could steamroll them, but we would have the same problem, forever war, right? But we don't have 2003 might. You know,
I
we
think
were
part of the real deterrent of some of this and that nobody realized was that Iran rained fire down from the sky on Tel Aviv. And regardless of what the media said and what, everything that was, community notes fake by, propaganda and all this stuff, like I think that Israel got bitch slapped much harder than they thought. And that
yeah,
Iran was like, we don't care if you destroy every single one of our bunkers, which I don't think we did. But I think, like, we don't care if you did. We're just going to launch, 1,000 missiles a day for 20 days straight at a country. And I think that, kind of like Israel's, while they're still running around doing their thing, I think that they realized a little bit that, like, if Trump hadn't been there with the Americans, like that, if
they
we
know
weren't over there, if we weren't over there, then they would be wiped from the map. And I
they
think,
know it. I'm
well, I
telling you, they
think
know it. That's why they
no, no,
use our military.
no, I think that in this case, they realized, like, oh, we better be a little bit more polite. Like, I think that Trump kind of was like, you know what? You're trying to bring us into a war. I'm going to let them bombard you with missiles for 20 days straight and remind you that, like, yeah, you're a very powerful
No, I
country
see
and you
what you're
have
saying.
some espionage and, like that, like but you are a land strip on the side of an entire continent that hates you. So, like, maybe you better be a little bit. And obviously, Israel's still trying their little tactics, killing those Lebanese, children, or, killing Lebanese soldiers after the ceasefire and stuff. Like, I really think that,
Desecrating churches, knocking
yeah,
a statue of Christ's head off with a hammer. Yeah,
I think they want a
Judeo-Christian.
war more than anything. But I think I would hope that Trump kind of realized, like, we really can't be doing war right now. Like, we need to be doing other things. And maybe Iran does need to be, those evil people, which, Trump's himself has been saying that the new regime is much more reasonable. I don't know, to believe that or whatever, but he's certainly not condemning them to death. Like, and I think I really hope that Trump realizes that this ain't the time. And I don't care if he ever admits it publicly, as long as he can find a way to strategically backpedal himself out of this conflict.
I mean, I heard something weird that, like, I don't know. I haven't corroborated this. I heard it. I heard it on a podcast I listened to. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if you've heard anything, but like Steve Witkoff's son just got busted for drug running. So
Will you
like,
say that again? Sorry, you kind of cut out there a little bit.
oh, sorry, I was saying I don't know if you heard about this, but I heard on a podcast I haven't checked into it, so this could be totally false. But they were talking about that Steve Witkoff's son just got busted for drug running. So like Witkoff might be out of the out of any future negotiations. I know that JD Vance has been told, I believe by Trump, that he will not participate in them anymore. And then it would just be the non-governmental person advisor, Jared Kushner, son of a felon. That's the ambassador of France, and that guy's a total puppet. Like he does not represent American interests. I don't care what anyone says. Jared Kushner's scum. So like, to me, it's like, why don't we? If we, that's why I don't really have faith in negotiations, Mist, is because I want them to happen because they need to happen, right? Because
Yeah.
it's gonna bankrupt this country, dude.
It's
I
going
don't
to
know if
bankrupt the world.
we're 40 fucking trillion, about $40 trillion in debt in this country alone. And the only reason we stand is because the massive amount of treasury bonds that Japan and China hold in other countries. Japan's in a near existential crisis right now. Dude, do you understand? And I think they hold more bonds than even China. So if they sell off, dude, do you understand what's going to happen? Like, people
Yeah.
don't get this shit. Like, this needs to end. Like, it's not a matter of victory against Iran or not. Like, okay, cool, let's go kick their ass. But do we want to be, the Soviet Union after Afghanistan? Like, do we want that like dark fucking irony of like us falling apart, just like the Soviets, our greatest enemy from the Cold War, falling apart? Do we want that? And
Nope.
like, and to your point, it's bigger than that. We're in a globalized world. Contrary to what people want to believe, it is becoming multipolar. We are leaving. Unfortunately, we're in the declining empire phase of America. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. A lot of people might disagree, but look around you. I mean, the price of eggs didn't go down. Your wages didn't go up. You're able to purchase less with your dollar. Seems like shit's not doing very well, right? We don't have as much, military might. China's pivoting. Yeah, we're the deep sea king of the Navy. The greatest deep sea Navy period in the world, and that still is true. I don't care what
Yeah.
anyone says. You leave you go into the deep ocean, we'll fuck you up. You're done. Okay, like, you don't stand a chance against us. But like, that is what's holding everything back, right? That's what's holding back China from going for Taiwan. But you know what China's doing, bro? China's negotiating peace with Taiwan. You don't see that on the news in America. They're literally extending an olive branch. They don't want war. They want to become the economic powerhouse. They want to dominate the world through technology, through social credit scores, and own own the world economically. They're not
And they do
fighting like
they do a good job at it.
yeah, they're doing a fantastic job at it.
Did you know
And
that
this
they own
war only
every
gives them
port?
a leapfrog on us, dude.
Yeah.
Like, by us being focused on this and putting our money into war instead of really putting these like $200 billion into, let's say, which I disagree with, but like, if the real race right now is who's gonna be the owner, like the power when it comes to AI, why isn't our $200 billion going there to compete against China? They're gonna fucking leapfrog us, and then we lose the existential war. If we're fighting for the primacy of emergent technology, and I'd argue it's not even emergent, it's here. We don't have general artificial intelligence, but
Maybe.
maybe. But like, that's where it's at. No.
So I think that one of the unfortunate side effects, of course, of an AI of losing an AI war is that then then we have to compete economically against a super titan, and like a super titan can out trade us. Now we do have a secret weapon in our back pocket, and I'm not saying that this is that these people have loyalty to America or that I like them in any sort of sense or that I even really like this AI because it's really bad. But it is to the point right now where it is kind of like we have to solve ourselves globally and then we can figure out ourselves locally. Like there is a power struggle going on in the world right now and we have to be a part of it. But Aladdin, BlackRock's AI trader, and I don't know if you know
Oh
anything
yeah, I've heard a
about
little bit about it. Talk about that a
Aladdin.
little bit.
So it's BlackRock's decision maker, and it controls
The
like
algorithm, right?
23 trillion dollars of assets at any point in time. And I think that it largely has to do with like real world assets, like the housing market and stuff like that. But obviously also stocks and other things, but so we do have kind of like these AIs that are, but I wouldn't consider BlackRock to be Team America. I just think that they're Team Not China. you know and I think that we need a Team America AI, the not to coin the term Team America, but we really do. We need
Right.
something, we need to view the world in a modern militaristic sense. And that's one of my biggest problems about these people who love missiles and Lockheed Martin and all this shit. Like we should only have enough missiles to defend our two oceans and our borders, right? Like, and I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we should have enough missiles to engage in whatever conflict we need, but our missiles should be focused on defending our borders, not flexing elsewhere in the world. The way that we really need to be flexing in the world is through fourth and fifth generational warfare. We need to stop relying on third generational military might in the world, because every other nation is going to fourth and fifth and potentially even sixth generation warfare. And I know that there's those people out there that are like, well, missed. We've got these anti-gravitational blah 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 weapons that can like turn your insides to peach jelly. And I'm like, I get it. We're awesome. But the problem is that other countries have science and technology too. Other countries have math. Other countries can figure out these things that we're inventing, right? There's only so many chords that you can make a song with out there, and other nations are trying to make their own symphonies. And so, like, sure, maybe they're not as, we love to downplay the power of other nations. We love to say, oh, well, they don't even have running water in Russia. And, oh, XYZ negative thing about China. And it's like, it doesn't, we need to put all of that aside, and we need to accurately assess that these other nations in the world have focused on education for 70 years while we piddled around and taught our kids how to dye their hair purple and mutilate themselves. And other countries were focused on real things like art and science and math and language and music and quantum physics and cybersecurity and economics. And other countries said, you know what? We're not trying to be the greatest. We are just going to grind.
Yeah.
And they've grinded. I really, maybe one of these times we should do an episode on cyber warfare alone, because it gets so big and everybody's like, oh, well, it's not that serious. And it's like, do you like to eat? Like, do
Yeah.
you like having the ability to turn on your heat in your house when it's 10 degrees outside? Like, this is the level that we're not playing at. We are not playing at this electrical supply chain level of the United States. And that's really dangerous, because our electrical supply chain, I don't know if you saw that post I made the other day, because everyone was like, I went into this spaces, and this super, this the most credentialed CISO, chief information security officer in the United States, was talking, and he was like, oh, our grid is the most secure ever, and all, our cyber defenses are up. And I'm like, dude, I know people that have accidentally hacked, in much deeper into military technologies than they meant to. They didn't even mean to. All of a sudden they were somewhere where they weren't supposed to be, and they were like, oh my God, pull up. Like, like I just changed a number in my address bar, and now all of a sudden I'm in top secret, confidential files. And I'm making up the analogy. It didn't really happen, but I know people who have accidentally discovered things, and it's like, and yet this guy was touting on and on. He was telling thousands of people that our cyber technologies, our cyber capabilities were basically impenetrable. And I got mad, like, inside, because I was like part of the reason why I got involved in the idea of maybe going into corporate cybersecurity is because we are baby turtles lying on our back, in wet concrete. We can't even figure out a way to flip over. We're stuck. And and for this guy who's like the most credentialed person to come up, and all these influencers were promoting him and all this stuff, and he was like, "Oh, we're the most robust ever. People don't need to worry at all." And I'm like, "You asshole." Like, like you just cut out 30 years of potential defense because you wanted to, not make us look bad. Like, I don't care if we look weak. Suck it the fuck up. If you look weak, hit the gym. Like, America needs to hit the cyber gym. And
It's the
I'm
cyber.
gonna I'm gonna put it down for a second because I don't want to bogart, but I really do
No, you're
think
good, man.
that we need to meet modern warfare where it's at.
I know, but the problem is when we live in a society that's now kind of gotten acclimated to being gaslit, it also has other repercussions and consequences to exactly what you just said. Because if we weren't so gaslit and people would still had critical thought, they would say, dude, you're so full of shit. Everyone on that call would have. But people don't know any better. So when he's telling them that, they believe that's the truth.
They just buy it.
They just buy it because they don't know any better. People that don't pay attention to this shit. Like I'm in this industry too, not in cybersecurity per se, but
But
in
you have to consider it every day.
in technology. Yeah, exactly. And like using AI integration, automation, there is security layers that we have to build in, that we have to make sure that vendors and RFP, which is like the process when you're going through, like they're bidding for like like you have a product need and like a bunch of different companies like I can do that for you, I could do that for you. That's like the RFP process, right? So you vet out each vendor. You're like, okay, cool. You could do this A, B, C, and D, and then you go to the next one, and you're like, can you do these things? So like you act like you know what you act like because like you heard the first guy tell you. You're like, cool. So can you do A, B, C, and D? And they're like, not only can we do A, B, C, and D, we could do E, F, and G. And then basically it gets into this situation where you're going back and forth between these vendors and you find the perfect fit because it's dollar, you got to look at the level of effort required for integration, the amount of money that it's going to require. Do you need to hire outside help or, possibly contract some of that vendor's specialist engineers, bring them in to like build what you need to build, right? But I see that because I'm there, but like do people understand when they open their, they go to Comcast and they get a Wi-Fi router? Do they understand how that security system that's built into that exists? Because if they did, they knew it was cheap shit. I'm not talking about. To be clear, I'm not calling out Comcast. I'm just using it as an example. But like, it's a
Don't
corporation.
hate us, Comcast.
Yeah, Comcast, you've been very good to me. Actually, like your internet service has been good to me. I will say I hate AT&T. They're scum, but and you are. Anyway, like these companies are going to go after what is most cost effective for them to turn a profit. Whatever their profit ratio is, 15%, 20%, whatever it is, they're gonna set it up that way. But the problem is they cut corners. But you, as a consumer, you're not doing your due diligence. You're not researching like you should have
You
been.
don't even know you have to.
You don't know. You're like, oh, they give you an advertisement, 30-second ad in between your video that pops up on your video on YouTube. And you're like, oh, cool. The ranked number one security by JD Power. You're like, dude, like
It's like rated number one security by Agricultural America. And people are like, yeah, great. And you're like, what does Agricultural America know about Wi Fi?
exactly. It's like, do you look at your router and say, is this a Broadcom router? Where is this router from? Who makes this router? What's the chipset? Et cetera. No one, not even me. And I work in this shit. But like, no one has the knowledge. So this CSIO, whatever the hell, can come in and tell you exactly what he wants you to believe, and you believe it. And this is the endemic issue of America. We're a bunch of lemmings. I say it all the time on X.
Yeah.
We just go with whatever we're told as a general populace. America still
It's our
has,
greatest weakness.
it is. Our greatest strengths are individuals. We still have that. But unfortunately, we're dwindling in that, in that pool of like brilliant individuals. And then those brilliant individuals that exist also live in a system of greed that they get poached by corporations and other things. And if they have a brilliant idea that they have a,
Who's not going to
and
take $15 billion for some idea that they had? Like,
I mean, I would tell you no, but like if I was in that position and it's like, man, like I got family, I could take care of my father, I could take care of my sister and my nieces or my nephews, my aunt, my uncle, I could take care of my family. You're right. Who could really say no to that? But that's the problem. Because even though you don't view that as a, I'm not trying to be, Bible thump here, but even though you may not in that moment view that as the sin of greed, it is because what you've built is for a purpose and you're giving it up for self gain, regardless. But like no one's selfless anymore anyway. And I digress. I know that was kind of a weird tangent right there, but
yeah,
that's just kind of like personal, creed for me. But I do caveat that with tomorrow, if I create something and they're like, bro, $15 billion, I mean, I would be a total liar if I
even
said,
15 million. You know, they're like
I
even
could say no to 15 million. But like
yeah,
if you give me $100 million and then you guarantee me I get 10-15% profit sharing, and then now that you bought me I get X amount of stock, holdings and stocks and options every year. I have
it'd be very hard to say no.
yeah, and they're like, you have a minority ownership in the company that actually puts you on the board. We'll give
And you
you
don't have to work.
and yeah, exactly. You're a consultant. So not only we give you all that, we're gonna give you another 3 million a year to just consult for us for the first 5 years, just so like we make sure we integrate your shit right. I mean, who can say no to that?
It'd
But
be
that's the
very hard.
problem. That's the problem, though. That's the system. That's the system we live in. I disagree with it. I don't like it. Because we've become victims of a system of greed. That's my opinion. I'm sorry if that's intense, but because I just try to live my life and be like practice humility. I fail at it every single day of my life, but like I try, and I try to be wise to this shit. And nothing's gonna change, dude, till more people try to take a step back and say, is this betterment for me worth it at the expense of X or Y, right? No one does that anymore. That's what people did 60, 70, 80 years ago. Our generation, millennial, and I would say from a boomer down, because the boomers are the most selfish generation to ever exist on the face of the earth. The American boomer generation. No offense to boomers, but y'all are selfish as shit. I mean, I've never had the most irrational arguments with anyone else besides like, you argue with your uncle, your aunt, and like you're talking about the latest news story. You're like, here's what it says. And they're like, no, that's bullshit. He told me that on Fox or on CNN. You're like, no, but I'm showing you like this is the white paper that tells you what it is. They're like, that's a
this
lie.
is this is a quote from the creator.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think I agree with you on the kind of like boomer aspect. And I think that that was where a lot of trust the government kind of came in. And I actually think that it came from the assassination of Kennedy, because I think that anyone who was having any sort of free radical thought watched their favorite man get shot in the head next to his wife on national television. And like they watch that, and I could only imagine. I don't really have any idols. Like anybody that I've ever looked to up to has already been assassinated by the US government before I was born, or is like I can't, there's no one to look up to. And I've the more you find out about your heroes, you're like, but I think that, the idea of that, those people thought that they were really like doing some things to change the world, and there was these really free ideas. And then they watched this person who is the highest leader in their mind get shot in the head. And, like, I think that's got to be some sort of demoralization on a very deep level. And I'm not trying to give boomers an out, right? I hold them responsible as well. And I'm not trying, blah, 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 good boomers, blah, 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 not everybody, blah, 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 whatever. I'm not trying to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
rude. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just like,
We
it's
love the
for real.
boomers.
But I do think that that's also where, like a lot of the brainwashing kind of came from, was like, scientists, the U.S. government and MK Ultra or whatever the program was called at that point in time, they learned how to move crowds and people
Yeah.
from rock gods, and it was an accidental byproduct of these rock stars that were going out there and literally making the crowd move.
It
It
wasn't
made,
accidental. Go look into Jerry Garcia and the MK Ultra trials. Was
oh
not.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
well,
we
and
could do
I
a topic
know.
on that one day.
We should, and I do know, but I do know that the outcome was that the government learned how to better mass manipulate a large mob of people, and
Yeah,
and you know, we are the most lied to generation, and I think that that's there's something in Americans that got lazy, and I don't know when, and I don't know who, and I don't know, there's a lot of whys and whatever, but I think that in our quest for knowledge there was something, and maybe it's something about graduating with a college degree. There's some sort of fucking magic spell attached to it, and I'm not saying everybody, because I got one, you've got one, there's a bunch of people out there that have one that think well, but I do think that for a lazy mind that there is some sort of like, I am complete in my knowledge and I have done everything that I need to do. And sure, people go on to learn more about what they want to learn about, right? But I think that they have decided that what they think is accredited enough to believe, and then
yeah,
that they don't have to. And for the people who don't realize that they're being manipulated by these places where they've hung their hat, like, I review the places that I get news from every day. I check every post that of people that I trust before I post it, things like that. Like, it's not even that, and some of these people, they chose their news source 50 years ago and they've
yeah,
never stopped to consider another thought, and there is something though to the mind of like, of them not being able to adapt to the critical thinking of the technological world. Again, not giving them a pass. And I think that Gen X is kind of guilty of it a little bit too. And millennials aren't perfect, right? Like, we are the
we are
laziest
not.
generation well, the laziest generation until Gen Z or whatever the frick
No,
is the
I
next.
think we're lazier than them, dude. I think they're just fucked. Because like some of the Gen Z guys I've worked with, the younger guys and girls that ladies I've worked with, like they're incredibly smart and they're driven, um, but they just don't have the opportunities. And they're all well. I'll tell you, no, you're right in the sense they have more loftier expectations than even we did. Like we thought we're going to come out of college and make 120K for our first job, and then we were pissed when our first job was 45K. They're coming out and they're getting their first jobs at 60, 70K, and they're still unhappy.
Yeah, which is wild.
Yeah, like
It's wild. So at
that's true.
some point in time, people lost a thirst for truth, in America. And I think that also people don't like to feel like they're wrong. They're not willing to be called out in a group of people. I'll be wrong all day, but if I think that I see something, I'm gonna bring it up, I'm gonna mention it. Like, there's been times that we'll be out in the mountains and we'll be camping, right? And these were the old group of friends, and I'll see clouds on the horizon and they look ominous, and I'm like, guys, we should maybe put the rain flies up or put our tents up, or finish whatever we're doing just in case it comes that way. And they're like, nah, it's not coming this way. And it's like, well, you don't know that. And I don't know that either, but it's there and it's a possibility. So let's prepare. And then if it is, we're already ready. We're
Right.
already through it. Um, but I did kind of have, we're getting up there in time, but I did
Yeah.
have kind of a little bit of a surprise topic that I wanted to kind of bring up with you,
Oh
and
yeah.
just see, like, a little treat for our guests and people coming to watch, followers, whatever. I wanted to, if you wanted to talk a little bit, I would like you to talk about what you know about the hashashin, and I would like to tell, after you're done with that, what I know from the Templars and the hashashin. If you wanted to go into, we've got 15 minutes ish left, and
Yeah.
it's a great last 15 minutes because people weren't really, they weren't really expecting it. If you wanted to talk about this a little bit.
I'll give it very like cursory information. just because I have to go back and read on it quite a bit. You know, like uh, it's a pretty complex subject, but I mean, it goes back to like this like rebellious.
What are the hashashin?
Well, they were like, and if I'm wrong, because I haven't read on it in a while, so like
And I
anyone
did
that's
surprise you, so no worries. We're
it's
not
okay.
all.
No, this is cool though. I like it, and I mean, people can comment and correct, and I'll learn from that or go back and read. But essentially, from what I can recall right now, they were like this like breakaway sect of Islam through the Ismaili sect, right? They kind of broke off, and dude, it is like Assassin's Creed's legit when it was like Masyaf or whatever, and like they had the castle and they had like the Mualim or whatever, like they had their leader, and they basically became a brokerage where they would deal in information at first, right? So they would basically be plainclothes kind of spies, and they would go get info for the Templar. They would go get info for the Saracens, and they would basically broker this information, and that was like their super weapon, right? They were called the hashashin because people used to think that they would smoke hash, right? And they would kind of like be this weird kind of group of people, but they didn't actually execute as many assassinations as people think they did. They did engage in that, but really they were just playing a really fucking smart game of destabilizing both of the powers in the region because they wanted them out, right? So
They were
they were
kind of
kind
like
of
the original CIA.
yeah, they were kind of like an original CIA, an intelligence agency, not necessarily beholden to the Persian Empire, from what I recall. It's not like they were like direct CIA-ish type,
Yeah, they were not
players.
government related. They were their own sect for
Yeah,
sure.
they were like they broke away. They broke away. They were out of Syria. They operated to essentially ensure that they can maintain control of the Levant area, or not allow any further growth of either one, not allow either side, the Christian or the Saracens or the Templar to grow. When they kind of got really involved, and I believe when the assassinations started to happen at a higher frequencies, when the corrupt French Templar came in, and that's where like the Assassin's Creed myth kind of takes place too, right in the game. I know I'm nerding out here a little bit, but like that game is like
It
it's
was so close to true.
I mean, when they portray the role, like not the
It's
details,
like
right?
1 degree off of what happened.
Yeah, like if you replace like the one, if you understand that when they're talking about the evil Templar, they're in that game, they're casting in a very broad stroke, which is not accurate because the vast majority
The
of
Templar,
Templar were the most
yeah,
honorable men that have walked this earth. Yes, they were Christians that killed, but they're warrior monks.
it was a way different time, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everything was warfare back then, and
If
um,
you didn't know how to fight, like your genes don't exist anymore.
true, true. I'll transition it to you. Like you want to talk, you want to take it from there on like the French Templar or whatever you want
Sure.
to talk about on that.
Yeah, so I love this is one of my favorite things is that you know what the hashashin are, even just in on concept, and maybe even more than I do, because I only understand the hashashin from a very small interaction, which comes from the Templar interaction with them, right? And I love how you do separate it out, that there's many different types of Templars and stuff. I like to call them infiltrated, and if you look at different theologies or ideologies, philosophies, governments through time, you can see when they were pure and true in intention, and then when some sort of influence came in and took over. And I refer to them as infiltrated after that. Now, the group that does it refers to them as illumined, and I do not believe that they're illumined. I believe that they're dark. So I like to use
Right.
the word infiltrated. But they would say, from the Templars to the illumined Templars, right? They would say from the Jewish people to the illumined Jewish. They would say from the Catholic to the illumined Catholic,
Mhm.
and so that would be the different. And so to you or I, as a person who was walking down the street, if you or I heard and you didn't know what I just said, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, I feel very illumined as a Catholic," you'd be like, "Oh yeah, cool, great," or I feel very illumined as a XYZ whatever, you'd be like, "Oh, that sounds cool," but really it's like a thumb in the nose, kind of like thing
Yeah.
to you. Anyway, I say a lot of that to come all the way back to that like you said, Assassin's Creed is basically real. The only thing that I like to say is that nowadays, like you said, nowadays the Templars, the people that were actually the godly people, like you said, not the French infiltrated Templars, not the Freemasonic
Not
Templars
the fake
now, not the
worshipers.
Catholic Templars now, like the actual original Templars are now in the game the assassins. So like you are actually playing as a Templar in the game, but they call it the assassin, and they of course make the bad guy, the Templar that you're fighting against. And those
Mhm,
people are actually what you could refer to as the infiltrated, Templars.
mhm.
So the Templars obviously first came across the hashashin or assassin, hashashin,
Got it.
back in when they went to first stumbled across them in Jerusalem. And at first there was a measure of them being at odds because obviously the Templars were an invading force. However, as these two groups, and because again, much in the same way that the Hashashin were not beholden to the Persian Empire nor the predominant Islamic sects at the time. They were their own group of people. The
Mhm.
Templar were the same. They were not part of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church agreed to, they agreed to be under the Catholic Church at that time
They sanctioned them. They
so that they
paid
didn't get
they paid for them.
inquisitioned. Right. Yeah. It was like they were a competing power and they were like, we don't want to fight the Pope. We'll just agree to be, under him, quote unquote,
Mhm.
but at heart, the Templars were their own order. They just were diplomatic. They understood that power to the Pope at that time was more powerful than governments, and so they didn't want to start a war with the Catholic Church. So, so that's why there is a delineation too of the Templars from the Catholic Church. Anyway, I digress. So, they quickly found, the Hashashin and the Templar quickly found that they shared a lot of common values in their quest for God, whether they called God, God or Allah. They found a love for being that kind of like warrior monk mindset where you are dedicated to training. You're like a Navy SEAL of the time, basically, but under your deity, whether it was Allah or God. And they found a lot of similarities and they actually paired up in a lot of ways. And there were evil Templars that came in, like you said, the French chapter that got corrupted, because that was where the source of power came from Jerusalem. It all sat in France.
Yep.
All of whatever they found went to France. And people argue that it's the Ark, that, all the knowledge and gold and all that, it went to France. And so you could easily see how that would be corrupted, like pretty easily. But the ones that were out there, and so this is one of my favorite parts of the whole story, and actually why I was sanctioned to become a Templar pirate. I am a Templar knight in a certain order, different than some of the. Like I'm not a Freemason. Freemasons have been trying to delete our Templars for a long time. I'm not a Catholic Church Templar. They're a different sect. I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody, but I am not either of those groups. But when I was talking to this Templar group, like, so this is a fact. The Templar Navy symbol was the Jolly Roger. It was, the skull and crossbones. That was the original Templar Navy symbol. You can look it up. It's fact checked. A lot of people don't know that. However, they after they went and went to Jerusalem and earned the respect of the Hashashin, that was when they were allowed to put the scimitars on the Jolly Roger. And so that was when it changed from the skull and crossbones to the skull and scimitars. So there's a different meaning if you see a pirate flag with the skull and crossbones versus if you see a pirate flag with the scimitars underneath it, because the scimitars were the weapon of the Hashashin. So it was this kind of like this allowance, like like you could say trademark agreement, almost like we're going to let you. This is our brand that we're on point. And so my theory was then, of course, that as the Templar pirate pirates, right, which are the ones that were the true Templars through time, not the infiltrated Templars, as they fled France at the betrayal of, the French Templar and the king and the Pope. As they fled France, they would have sailed west. Like they wouldn't, it would be so hard to go north out of France on foot at that time to try to outrun, the French Empire, the infiltrated Templar order, and the Catholic Church. Like you're going to go through a lot of. You would hop in the boats that you own and you would sail west. And some of them wound up in Ireland, and that was where the Freemasons started before they were infiltrated. But I speculate that a group of them continued further west and wound up in America. And that's where you really find, the deep seated pirate flag in Caribbean culture, is that, which could tie into Pirates of the Caribbean sort of a little bit story, is like you're on the run from the empire. And they enjoyed that so much. This is all theory. I can't prove that the Templars ran from Scotland to America. We know that they went to Scotland. We know they had boats. We know that their pirate flag or that their flag, their Navy flag, was the Jolly Roger. So take those facts as you want, and I created a story out of them of the Templar pirate. But it all kind of originates from their interaction with the hashashin. And, we could probably do, a lot of episodes on like, where are the hashashin now? Where are the Templar now? Those are discussions to be had. But I just wanted to kind of throw that cool little thing
I
because
like
you're
that.
one of the few people out there who even know that the hashashin exist as a real actual religious sect, and maybe one of the first espionage sects. And the Templars learned a lot of what they know from the hashashin.
No, that's super cool. I'm happy you shared that. Man, it's just crazy how, if you believe in Illuminati or, not, or you don't, like, let's just say like secret societies, I would say, um, they have to operate by like the metaphysical, rules and laws where they have to respect man's free will. But they've learned the loopholes and how to manipulate that. So they provide you imagery, they create illusion of choice to manipulate your free will. So few people are aware of this, right? And it goes even further back than the Hashashin and the Templar. One episode I'd like to do with you in the future would be, it kind of ties into this too. Maybe we'll talk about it and see how we could tie the topics together. But I know I've always like on the side, off of like a podcast or anything, always tell you about like the black nobility, like the St. Clairs, the
Yeah.
Borgias, the Rothschilds, all these families, and it all ties together. And it's they're tied together through very nefarious religious beliefs. And yeah, they know that they can't operate outside the construct of God's laws, right? So they manipulate man, and it's just interesting when you play like a game like Assassin's Creed and you have like even just like cursory knowledge of this, and you're playing that game for the first time and you're like, holy shit, they're admitting so much in this game.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's like they're literally telling you
The
like
whole
this.
story.
It's crazy. And some people are gonna listen to this, be like, y'all are full of shit, dude. Go read about the Templar, read about the Hashashin, read about the black nobility. I always suggest people to go. It's a massive, huge book, but like Fritz Springmeier's Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Man, if you want to learn about like blue bloodlines, like family trees, and like realize it goes back thousands of years, that the British royal family is not even British. The current British royal family, the Saxe Gothas, like they're not even British. And King Charles has a dotted line bloodline to, on the family tree to Vlad the Impaler. Like people don't even realize this shit. It's just like, we got to go deep on one of those. That would be a fun ass
Very
episode.
fun.
Be like a conspiracy episode, but honestly, those are my personal favorite topics. I just like going off the deep end,
Me too.
and just having fun talking stuff. Might be totally wrong on everything I talk about, but it's just still enjoyable, man. But this was a fun one, man. I'm excited for the next one that we're gonna do in the coming weeks. I just want to thank you very much, man. Doing 4 weeks with me on this, I appreciate it. We're
Yeah, it
gonna
was a
do
lot of fun.
It was, man. I know we had pretty fun one, then we had some pretty serious ones in the middle, and it's just kind of nice to land the plane here. I know that's one of our mutuals' least favorite phrases in the world, but it applies. It applies here, and I want to thank you again for your time. And we'll be chatting. We'll chat a little bit offline and figure out when we can get back together next
Cool.
month, and let's talk about something like this. I think that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, let's do. I refer to them as the Dark Priest class, and like whatever version of the Dark Priest class through time. And I do that because Mark Passio, he talks about that. He talks about calling them the Dark Priests, and I really think that that's very cool because they try to use that kind of like misnomer or like the anti. What is it? Not I don't know. It's like it's kind of a snub nose thing. Like, oh, we're the illumined ones. Like, nah, you have the dark. And so I would love to do one, and see kind of, and it's like it's one of my, favorite things to discuss. And the trail through time is really kind of cool. So thanks, for all of this and talking about all this. And yeah, it was a great 4 weeks, and I look forward to the next one for sure.
Awesome, man. No, me too, man. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this one. Please be sure to give my good friend here, Mist, a follow at Into the Mist 13. Uh, for me, it would be really nice if some of y'all can subscribe. That would be really
Yeah.
cool. Subscribe, comment, and like, and share with your friends, and show them how fun of a conversation we can have here on this show. And please follow me at MNBFY Pod on X. Got it. And
Hey.
got it this time. And there's a police car driving by, so enjoy that. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next week. I'll have another guest on next week. A little bit different of a show, but man, Mist, just so everyone that has watched and will watch in the future, just get used to seeing Mist a lot. This is one of my best
Yeah.
friends here, and you're gonna see Mist here quite a bit. But yeah, Mist, thanks, man. Have a great evening and a great
I have a
weekend.
closing
And
question just
yeah,
for
yeah,
you and the audience. Let's just leave the thread. The question that I love to ask whenever I run into a Freemason in the world is I love to look at them and I say, who is Hiram Abiff? And I'll leave it there. We can find out.
fair
Who
enough.
is Hiram Abiff? And I'll catch you next time.
All right, brother. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.